All right, welcome. This is class 3 on loving your wife like Christ loved the church. And tonight we're going to talk about the needs of a wife. And I want to say that we have a lot to cover. We have, there's a lot of really excellent information in this, but I want to reiterate again until we get to the end of this section about the needs of a wife, that this is basically information that I have developed for marriage counseling, all right? Specifically for premarital counseling. But there's a lot of it that actually applies to any marriage. I think all of it applies to any marriage, but it's certainly the kind of information that you can use when you have to do marriage counseling. I want to say again, I've said it many times, that marriage counseling is the most draining thing in the ministry. It's the most draining thing that you will ever have to do. So if you can pass the buck, you probably will enjoy that. Find somebody in your church that really likes to do it and get them to do it. It's very, very emotional. It's very time consuming. It's draining on you in a lot of different ways. And so you need to have a good set of information, and that's what I want this to be for you as much as is possible, especially when it comes to premarital counseling, and that's what this is geared to. So I might be sounding like I'm talking to you as married couples, but I'm not. I'm really talking to like you were in a room with that's right. Robbie's not married, so but it'd be like you were sitting in a room talking to a young couple that were going to get married. This normally lasts for me 8 weeks. I don't know how many weeks it'll last here. It'll probably last up to 4 maybe. So I'm covering it, if I spend an hour with them each week or every week or an hour and a half or something, have discussion about all these things. This is stuff that you can really use in the ministry. I want you to turn in your Bibles, if you would, to 1 Corinthians chapter 7 and verse 3. 1 Corinthians 7 and verse 3. This is part 4. It's called the needs of a wife. What are the needs that your wife has? Now, because this is a course on ministry non-negotiables, I want you to make the crossover to how you should treat your wife. She has needs, right? So it's not just for premarital counseling. You can use it, but you need to make the crossover in your own life as to, and then we're going to get more into how to love your wife like Christ loved the church. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 3, I want to use this out of the Good News Bible. I just like this translation. I wouldn't normally use that. But I'm going to read it first in the in the New King James, and then I'll show you the difference in the Good News Bible. In the New King James, it says, "Let the husband render to his wife the affection due her, and likewise also the wife to her husband." Now, the Good News Bible actually translates it a little bit differently. It says a man should fulfill his duty as a husband, and a woman should fulfill her duty as a wife. Now, those are two completely different ways of saying something here. But what I liked about the Good News Bible, not that I really like that translation to use, but I think what it's saying there is that a man has a duty to fulfill towards his wife. Whereas if you look in the New King James, it just says render to his wife. There's something about that is a little impersonal to me. I can't put my finger on it. And I think fulfilling his duty, it almost sounds a little bit impersonal as well. But I have an obligation to my wife. Every husband has an obligation to his wife. And the woman, likewise, should fulfill her duty, her obligation as a wife, and each should satisfy the other's needs. And so that last part there about satisfying the other's needs does not come out in the New American Standard or in the New King James. You have to be a little bit careful here. So I want you to know that I understand why. I just want you to understand that I like the idea that I have an obligation. I like the word obligation better than the word duty. You know, duty is like, well, you just have to get up at 6 o'clock and go marching with the rest of the guys, right? But I have an obligation to my wife, and my wife has an obligation to me. And so meeting your spouse's needs, whatever they are, and for every marriage they are different, but there are a lot of things that are common from wife to wife, husband to husband. The husband has certain needs, the wife has certain needs, and fulfilling those needs as you are part of your obligation to your mate, to your spouse. God expects husbands to satisfy the needs of their wives. He expects the wives to satisfy the needs that she has. They're different. Needs that a husband has are much different than the needs that a wife has. Obviously, we all need to be loved and to be to be loved by our spouse. I tell my wife all the time, I said, sweetheart, you're the one woman you're the one person on the planet that I cannot live without. I tell her, she loves this. I tell her, we saw a movie a long time ago. It was called You've Got Mail. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you remember it. It had Tom Hanks in it and Meg Ryan, and they owned a bookstore and stuff. And at the end of the story, she doesn't know. She was called the shop girl, and he didn't know who she was, but he knew who she was. He had found out. And at the end, they decided that they were going to meet, and when they met, because he ran her out of business, and they would kind of argue, and she'd get all upset about it because she'd act a little ugly, and he realized that he could be a little overbearing, and then they started to kind of get close, and so they decided to meet. And even though they had been meeting already, they just didn't know who they were talking to online. And when he walked up with his dog in some park in New York City, she started crying, and she says, I was hoping it was you all along. And I tell my wife that all the time. I tell her that all the time. I say, sweetheart, I said, I was always hoping it was going to be you. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I was hoping it was going to be you, you know. And so the problems, I think, the problem is very simple. And you have to understand this as a principle as we go through this. And Rachel, you're certainly welcome to chime in here as the wife. I wish the other two women were here tonight, but they're not. The problem is that the needs that the husband has and the needs that the wife have are different. They're very different. If you went back and looked at the needs of a husband and you looked at the needs of a wife, you'll find out they're very different. Your wife's needs are not the same as yours. So if you try to meet her needs thinking, well, this is what I like, or this is what I need, you're going to miss what it is that she needs. You cannot think that way when it comes to your marriage partner. Her needs are different than your needs. You're going to miss the boat. If you go to 1 Peter chapter 3, we're going to spend a bunch of time in 1 Peter chapter 3. Verse 7, it says, husbands, and he tells them several things that he wants them to do. It says, husbands, he's talking to all of us. It says, likewise, that's an important word. Likewise. Likewise, why? What? What's he talking about here? He tells the wives in verse 3, verse 1, wives likewise, that they had to be doing something similar to what Jesus was doing in verse 23. He says, husbands likewise dwell with them with understanding. That's the first one, right? Dwell with them with understanding. You got to be understanding. You got to figure out what their needs are. They're different than yours. Giving honor to the wife, that's the second one. That's to the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers may not actually be hindered. In other words, you have to respect your wife. You've got to give her honor. You've got to dwell with them. You've got to understand them. You got to dwell with them with understanding. You got to give them respect and honor them in their life. So you do this so that your prayers will not be hindered. If you don't think that God may be answering your prayers, one of the reasons for it may be is because of the way that you actually treat your wife. My wife is my single most important ministry in my life. Period. Nothing takes her place. Nothing. In my own personal life. Nothing gets in the way of my relationship to my wife. And so I think it's really interesting that the Bible is very clear here that how you treat your wife determines how effective your prayers are. Maybe you just feel like, heaven's been it's been like steel. It just never gets through. But one of the reasons maybe is because you mistreat your wife. You don't love her the way Christ wants you to love her. You don't live with her with understanding. You don't respect her. So these are the three things that you're to do with your wife. Let's see if we can break them down here out of this verse, out of 1 Peter 7. Number one, you got to understand your wife. You can look at it there. And we're going to go over this verse in great detail, all right? So we'll come back, but this is just for marriage counseling purposes, all right? So I'm going to just go through it a little bit quicker and a little bit differently than we'll teach it a little bit later. But the word understanding means to be considerate. It means that you have to be thoughtful of your wife's needs and her feelings about something. My wife always she fixes us a snack so we can eat it on the way home, and today she had out a banana and an apple, and Chris came, and he came by my house and picked me up tonight, and since Brenda wasn't going to be with me, he said, I'll come by and pick you up and we can ride together, which we did, and I said, Chris is not going to eat an apple. He's not going to eat an apple. That's what I told her. I said, he's not going to eat an apple or a banana or something. I said, I already had a banana. I said, I'm just going to leave these. She said, no, you need to take the apples. I said, well, I don't think he's going to really eat an apple, and I'll have to just bring it back. And she said, no, I want you to take the apple. So that was it.
Yes, dear.
That was it. That was it as far as it went. I got the apples out in the truck. He wants an apple, he can have it on the way home. He can have both of them if he wants them, because I'm not going to eat them. But it's just no big deal. I'll take the apples, yes ma'am. I'll be glad to do that.
Me and Cindy joke about that. She says, I'm not bossy, I just know what you need.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, she probably does, you know. She probably does. I think my wife knows what I need. So you give her needs intentional and deliberate thought. But here's the problem. You've got to understand what those needs are before you can meet them, right? If you don't know what her needs are, you can't meet her needs. This is really critical. This is like basic marriage 101. Oh, I'd like to meet your needs. I don't have a clue what they are. You got to find out what they are. And the problem that you may not have is not understanding that women are much more complex than men.
Complicated, you mean?
No, complex.
And I shouldn't have to tell you.
Yeah, that's right. So we're not ganging up on you.
Aren't you a mind reader?
No.
We're not ganging up on you tonight. So they're just more complex. They are. And I think there are reasons for that. And we'll cover some of that as we go through here. The second, he says, I want you to dwell with them. That's what he says. It's the verb there. Likewise, dwell with them. And that verb means to spend time with your wife. James and Cindy, they go walking together all the time. They take a 3K or a 5K walk on almost a daily basis, or when the weather's okay, probably 4 or 5 times a week. I know where they are. We're friends. What do we call it?
Find my...
Yeah, find your friends, or find my friends or something, and I'll look up, see where they are, and they're out there at the track walking and stuff, and it just means to spend time with your wife. That's all it means. It's not that you live with them, it's that you spend time with them. Now this is going to get more critical when we get into a little bit more detail. If you're going to be best friends, then you have to develop some mutual interests, right? You have to have some things that you do together so that you can spend some time together. I know if you have young children, that's probably, they can absorb all your time. You'd be taking them to this practice and that practice and ball practice and dance and soccer and whatever else they have out there, you know, gymnastics, you know. But you have to develop some mutual interests and some things that you can do together. So the idea, though, behind the word dwell, the underlying idea and the nuance of that word is that it means to share your life with somebody. You are sharing your life with somebody. It's not just that you're going down to the grocery store together. It's that you're sharing your life with somebody. This is a little bit different than you just live in the same house. You are sharing your life and your joys and your disappointments and your hurts and the good things and the bad things. You're sharing your life with them. And so it's the idea that you just do things together. The problem is, I think, is that we compartmentalize our lives too much. We got marriage, work, sports, hobby, church, whatever it is, our jobs, you know, it's like a pie. And we cut it into 8 or 9, 10, 12 pieces, whatever it is, and we got this little pie. We go to church, you know, we go to work, you know, we go to the gym, and blah 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 blah. We do all those kind of things. That's not what we're talking about here. I want my wife to be a part of every part of my life. Every part of it. She can't go to, when I was working at Seminary Riverside, she couldn't go to work with me, all right? But I want to go everywhere with her. I want to do everything with her. She wasn't feeling well today. I took her to the med center. I wasn't going to let her go by herself. I'm going to share my life with her, not just the bedroom and meals. I'm going to do everything I can to be her best friend all the time. She has top priority. She wants me to bring the apple and give it to Chris, I'll bring the apple and give it to Chris. It's just that simple. Chris, you want that apple? Oh, it's in the car.
They're in the car.
They're in the car, both of them in the
Chris, I eat
car.
that apple on the way home.
That's right.
If not, it will be eaten tomorrow.
That's right. The third is that you need to respect your wife. The husband needs to respect his wife. Study after study has shown that the number one determining factor in how a wife feels about herself is how her husband responds to her.
Ooh, that's serious.
It is serious, but it's real. It's very real. If you've never done marriage counseling with couples that don't get along together, I know a couple. Chris knows a couple that they just have trouble talking. I can't tell you why. They just had all kinds of trouble in their marriage. Talking, they just cannot seem to be able to communicate without arguing about things. And so what happens is that when the husband does not respect his wife, it's very difficult on her, because that's where she, if I can use this term, that's where she gets a lot of her self-esteem, is what her husband thinks about her. I build my wife up every day. Not just once, not just twice, not just 3 times. I leave notes. I do. I hug her. We talk. We communicate. We go places everywhere together. I don't want her to go to Walmart by herself. She just has my full attention. And so I think that a woman largely gets her self-esteem from how her husband responds to her, how he speaks to her. Will not talk to my wife ugly. I refuse to do that. There was a time when I would have done that if I felt like I wanted to. You will not hear me talk to her ugly. I'm not going to make fun of her in public. I'm not going to demean her in any way. I'm going to build her up as much as I possibly can. I'm going to treat her right. I'm going to let her know how I feel about her, that I love her. So every time that you demonstrate and express appreciation for your wife, every time that you express that appreciation and demonstrate it, you make her feel more valuable to you. And I tell my wife all the time, honey, I can't live without you. You're my caregiver whether you get paid for it or not, you know. There's just so much stuff I wouldn't know what to do. I'd have to get my daughter to come over and live with me if something happened to my wife, you know. She'd have to leave her husband and come over and take care of me, because I'd probably starve to death and die and have to go buy new clothes every day just because I don't know how to use a washing machine. But it's much deeper than that. I mean, that's kind of remedial, but you've got to demonstrate and express your appreciation for your wife. Now, what I want to do is I want to give you 3 basic needs of a wife. I'm sure that there are more. Right? If you're doing marriage counseling, there's only so much time that you have, right? You only have so many weeks that people are going to give you. So you have to be careful. Some people may give you 4 weeks. Some people may give you, I've done all of this in as quickly as 3 weeks. But I normally do it in 8 weeks. I have a marriage that I have to do in March the 17th, which is a Friday. And I've never even met the couple. They both are widowers. And both of their partners died early. They're only like 48 and 46, and both of them have already lost their first marriage partner. So I don't know exactly what kind of counseling that I'm going to do with them, but I am. Here's the first need of your wife. She needs your affection. She needs your affection. I think this is the first thing that a woman cannot do without, simply because I want you to think of affection as the cement of a relationship. So when my wife and I are out in public, we hold hands. We're affectionate at home. We hug each other. We have long hugs. They may last 30 seconds or something. That's a long hug. Most people just kind of go up and hug him and say, "I love you," and then that's it. I'll just sit there. I could sit there for 5 minutes. I'll just be hugging her and say, "Honey, why don't we just go to sleep like this?" You know. My wife needs my affection, and it's the cement of a relationship. It's continuous affection. It's not just once a week. It's continuous. That's the key word, that she has to have continuous affection, because it symbolizes security. It symbolizes comfort and approval. And when a husband shows affection to his wife, he's sending a very, very powerful message to her that says, I care about you. I'll take care of you. I'll protect you. I'm concerned for your needs. I approve of you. I'm proud of you. That's what your affection does. I want you to go to Colossians chapter 3 and verse 19. Colossians chapter 3 and verse 19. And it says that some of this way. It says, "Husbands, love your wives and do not be bitter toward them." Now, what that is saying to us as men is that you are never to deal harshly with your wife. I don't rebuke my wife. It's very seldom that I feel like I have to correct my wife. I really don't. I don't want to. She's smart, she's intelligent, she's strong spiritually. I don't have to be walking around the house telling her all the things that she needs to do differently. You don't ever want to deal harshly with her or tear your wife down. You don't want to ever put her down. You don't want to put her down, period, but you definitely do not want to put her down in public. That's about the worst thing that you can do, is to talk lightly about her, jokingly, in kind of a negative way in front of other people. You need to understand that this idea of affection, that she needs affection, that affection and sex are two totally different things. Men don't get that. That's why I'm telling you this, because men don't understand. They don't understand that at all. Most of the men that I have to counsel with, they don't have a clue what I'm talking about.
Can I interject?
Yes.
I think wives want to feel cherished.
Well, we're going to use that same word.
Yes, that's how I see it.
Right. We're going to use that word out of Ephesians 5 about nurtured and cherished. All right. And that's the right biblical word, Rachel. That's the right biblical word. To men, affection and sex are the same, but to a woman, they are very, very different. Now, I'm going to talk about sex here for a little bit, and we'll have some more. We'll talk about it more as we go through this. But so I want you to put yourself in the place of a marriage counselor to a young couple that's getting married. You're trying to help them along the way, or a couple that's not getting along in their marriage. But affection to a man means foreplay. It's the stuff you do before you get to the real stuff. But to a woman, affection is totally different from that. It's totally different from sex itself. when it comes to sex and affection, you cannot have one without the other. They're both are very, very critical, and they're both very important. And so your wife has this deep need for affection. I've done enough research on this. I've done enough marriage counseling over the years. I'm just convinced that what I'm going to tell you is right, is that most affairs start because men do not get enough sex, and most affairs start for women because they do not get enough affection. Chris and I know of a couple right now where the wife basically, I don't know how many years, Chris, you can, maybe you can help me out, that she basically has withheld sex from her husband for years.
10 plus.
10 years.
10 plus years.
10 years. And you know what the husband's doing? He got on the internet and is having affairs with other women, because for 10 years that she had reasons that she didn't want to do it. Really, really sad. And so you can't have one without the other. Affection is what I want to call it. It's the atmosphere, and sex is the event, and they both are very, very different. You have to learn how to be affectionate. You have to learn how to be affectionate. You cannot have sex all the time, but you can be affectionate all the time. In fact, you have a lot more time to be affectionate than you have to have sex all the time. That's a very important thing to understand and appreciate. Remember last week I mentioned to you this book that was written, I don't know who wrote it, I forget who wrote it, I read it. It said that sex begins in the kitchen. In other words, sex begins before you ever get to the bedroom. So you are affectionate all day long. As soon as my wife gets up, I'm affectionate with her. I fix her coffee, I go hug her, I ask her, if there's, what time we got to be somewhere, what can I do for her, can I take the trash out, I help wash the dishes, I clean the table, I do everything that I can to make her day as easy as possible. I love doing it. I want to do it. And so women do not get turned on as quickly as men do. Most men takes about 3 seconds and another 15 seconds and they're done. You can just take them, they're done. They're history. But women are not that way. It takes a longer time for them to build up. Now what we're doing here is that we're talking about a topic that is that if you're counseling with a young couple, they probably have never had anybody sit down and talk to them about any of these issues. So they just think that sex is something that you do that's just real natural, and if you do that, you'll find out that it's not. It's not something. It may seem natural, but it requires a lot more in your life than just hopping into bed with somebody. So what creates the atmosphere for a rewarding sex life is affection. I love being affectionate with my wife. I do. I love holding her and caressing her and talking to her and hugging her and being with her, taking her places, all of those kind of things that enter into this. I believe that any man can learn to be affectionate. I've had men in counseling sessions tell me, well, I'm just not the affectionate type. And I just say that's baloney. That's about what I would say to them face to face. That's just nonsense. I've had people say, well, I never grew up in an affectionate home. My wife has told me, I might have mentioned this last week, but my wife told me that she never heard her father or her mother tell each other that they love one another.
I never did either.
It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, you got to think about what you just said, Chris, and what my wife told me. She never heard her father tell her mother that he loved her, or he never heard her tell him that she loved him. My grandkids, everybody I know, hears me tell my wife that I love them. I got criticized a while back because somebody felt like I was, on my messages, that I talked a lot about what a wonderful marriage I had. And I think the reason was because they didn't have a very good marriage. And they just got tired of me talking about it. And I thought to myself, well, what are you wanting me to do? You want me to just tell everybody I got a really bad marriage? We're falling apart, I'm the pastor of your church. I'm to be a model. You've got to be a model if you're going to be a pastor. And you've learned a lot of things that you never learned at home, right? So affection is something that you have to learn to do. You have to take the time to learn to be affectionate. And how can I be affectionate? And how can I show affection for my wife? It's a habit. It's a lifestyle that you have to develop. It's something that you do every single day, in the morning, in the afternoon, at night. If you're watching TV together, if you're riding to go to church, it doesn't matter. My wife normally drives all the time, whether it's in her car or my truck. She drives most of the time. I don't like to drive. But she'd be sitting there, and I'll just reach over and I'll just grab her arm. I'll just kind of just touch her, just let her know, and I'll say something like, I can't live without you. It just goes on all day. It's normal. It's just like we eat three meals a day, right? It's just, it's a lifestyle for both of us that we do that. We leave notes around the house. And like any good habit, it takes time to develop. When you first start doing it, it may seem a little awkward to give extra hugs and kisses and notes of affection. It may seem awkward, like any new habit that you ever develop, but you have to learn how to do it. But if you don't even know that that's what your wife needs, you're not going to do it. You have to take the time until it just becomes a part of your life, and you'll see dramatic results. Now, I want to give you 4 ways that you can show affection. This is still under number 1. I guess I called it 1 in my notes. Roman numeral 1, I guess. How did I do that? I just called it need 1. But I want to give you 4 ways that you can show affection. These ought to be obvious to you, so just be very, don't make fun of me. I'm not trying to insult your intelligence here, but you can show affection by your words, right? I think that's to begin with, that's the primary way that you have to show affection. You have to show affection by your words. Every wife needs a steady diet of compliments. Your role is to keep her emotional tank absolutely full. Compliment her on how she looks. Compliment her on her cooking, on how she dresses, on how she speaks, on how she deals with the children, and how she keeps your home, everything. If you walked into my home, James and Cindy, James and Chris have been to my home. You've been to my home. Have you ever been inside the home?
No, you let me on the porch.
I didn't just let you on the porch. I would have let you inside. If you go inside, it doesn't look like me. It just doesn't look like me. It looks like my wife. I don't care how she does it. I want her to be happy. She's the queen. And I tell her that. I said, you can do anything in here that you want to. Any style, any kind of furniture that you want, any color, I don't care. I'm an architect, I'm artistic, I have feelings about color and compliments and all that kind of stuff. But I want it to be, she keeps her home so nice. My wife is a neat freak. She's the queen clean. She's the clean queen, I call her. I can barely go down to the church with her sometimes, Chris, when she starts cleaning down there. Because I just go to sleep on the pew. Because she's not going to do it in 30 minutes, you know. She doesn't let anything go. She's cleaning blinds and she's got things up there. It's unbelievable. I want you to go to Song of Solomon, chapter 4. I want to read verse 1 through 7. And my point here is that Solomon,
Chapter what again?
chapter 4, verse 1 through 7, is that Solomon was a pro at what I want to call verbal affection. Verbal affection. I can't even find it. I know where it is. Verbal affection. This guy's just crazy about his wife.
Which one?
He's just absolutely crazy. Come on, Gary. Chapter 4. There it is, chapter 4. He's just absolutely...
At least the one in this book.
Yeah, the one in this chapter anyways.
Yeah. He's just crazy about his wife. And he's a pro at expressing that affection for her. I'm going to read this. It makes a lot of people blush, and some people don't have a clue what he's talking about.
Are you 7 or 4?
Huh?
4? Chapter 4?
Verses 1 through 7.
Chapter 4, verse 1 through 7.
7's pretty good too, actually. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
He says, "The beloved, behold, you are fair, my love. Behold, you are fair. You have dove's eyes behind your veil. Your hair is like a flock of goats." And I don't know what that means, but I think it meant something really
And
good
that's
there.
the Old Testament compliment there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going down from Mount Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of shorn sheep, which have some coming up from the washing. I still don't know what all that means, but I know it's
White teeth.
I know. I got it. Every one of which bears twins, and is barren among them. Your lips are like a strand of scarlet. Your mouth is lovely. Your temples behind your veil are like a piece of pomegranate. Your neck is like the Tower of David, built for an armory, on which hang 1,000 bucklers, all shields of mighty men. Your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle, which feed among the lilies until the day breaks and the shadows flee away. I'll go my way to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of frankincense. You are all fair, my love, and there's no spot in you. Now that, some people just can't read that. If I read that in church, I'm sure that people would blush.
That's good stuff, though.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's good
Just about
stuff.
teeth.
No, it's good stuff.
Or the hair.
Yeah, I'm gonna go tell Cindy that she's got hair like a goat.
That's we know how that goes,
Well,
James.
Well, you got to figure another way to say that. You got to have another way. I praise my wife for her hair, and you know. This guy's got his act together. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. This is verbal affection. This is verbal attention that he's given to his wife. This is not flattery. This is affection with words that he's actually using. If I can say it this way, I think this is the right way to say it. He is verbally caressing his wife. Right? He's setting the mood. He's setting the tone. He's setting the environment for a meaningful, deep, intimate relationship that he wants to have with his wife.
This is kind of like when you first meet and you got all like googly and you can't wait to see each other kind of stuff. So you can still have this excitement and this verbal affection years into marriage, and that's just.
I'm gonna tell you, I've been married for 51 years, and we have it more than we've ever had it in our life. I'm just telling you, we talk like this all the time. I mean, I don't tell her she got hair like a goat, but I tell her how beautiful she is.
Not just to go off.
You know, I do. I tell her how beautiful she is. All the time, in every way that I can imagine. It doesn't matter to me if she just got up or if she's just going to bed. Anything in between. I want her to know just how beautiful she is to her husband.
But isn't this also a symbol of Jesus with the church, right? The bride and the whole Song of Solomon.
I think that there are a lot of people that have made it to be like that. Okay, I haven't.
Okay.
I'm just telling you, I haven't come to that conclusion. This is a man telling his wife how much he loves her. I think that's why it's there. But but we're to love our wife like Christ loved the church. So, I wouldn't argue with anybody about that. I wouldn't say it's not. I don't see necessarily that the New Testament uses the Song of Solomon in that way. But it wouldn't surprise me if that's what it was. Okay.
I'm going home and watch videos of goats jumping down the mountainside and see if I can compare and contrast.
No. You gotta take your wife right where she is. Number 2, you can show affection by your actions. So you show affection by your words, you show affection by your actions. You have to always be performing acts of kindness for your wife. I know that James and Chris have heard me say this many times. I don't ever want my wife doing something that I can do for her. I don't want her taking out the trash. I don't want her getting the groceries in. I don't want her opening the door. I always open the door for my wife in the car or going into the house. That's just what I do, and I buckle her in, and when she's driving, and I buckle her in, and right then, there are plenty of times I kiss her, or I tell her how much I love her. When we get somewhere, I go open the door, I unbuckle it, and I tell her again how much I love her. This goes on all the time. It just goes on all the time. If we went out to eat together as a couple with y'all, with a couple here, Robbie will get you a girlfriend and we'll go out and so you can watch. It's just normal. It's just normal. It's just what we do. In fact, my wife is so, I don't want to say trained because that's not the right word. My wife is so conditioned to that's what we do, that if I forget for some reason, which I have, she just sits in the truck or the car. She stays there until I get there. And I love that. I just love that. It means something to me that's what she knows that's what I want her to do. I've asked her, I said, don't get out of this car without me helping you get out. So you need just to be performing acts of kindness. You need to plan some things that show her that you are thinking of her when you're not with her. Just leave her a note. That she will find in the middle of the day. Call her up on the phone, text her. Let her know that you're thinking about her. I always let my wife know where I am. If I go into Aiken or something and my wife is at home by herself, I'm going to call her and let her know I'm on the way home. Last Sunday, she wasn't feeling well. She didn't go to church. And as soon as I got in the car to leave from church on Sunday morning, I called her and I said, sweetheart, I'm on my way home. And I'll be there in about 25 minutes. And it's just, I'm going to call her. I'm going to let her know where I am. Just let her know where you are, and when you will be getting home, tell her how good the lunch was that she made you for work. She cooked lunch. My son was there. His girlfriend was there. My wife had, the night before, she wasn't feeling good, and she still just made this wonderful lunch for everybody, and nobody left the table without telling her how good it was. Number 3, you can show affection by your touch. This is really important to me. Some couples don't know how to touch one another. I think holding hands is still a great thing to do. I love to see couples holding hands when they're walking into church. I like to see more than just the teenagers with their arms around each other. Duh. I'm serious. I'm really serious. The kids that they figured something out that the adults have forgotten about, you know. I think it's a good sign. Hugs do wonders. One of the most common complaints I want to read to you that I hear in counseling is ladies who say to me, he only touches me when he wants sex. The only time he touches me is when he wants sex. I'm at that age. I don't need sex. That sounds crazy. I don't mean to sound weird about that. I'm old. You know, things don't work like they used to. I don't need it. We have so much affection between us. It's just a whole nother realm. And if your wife feels that way, then at that point they're not even interested. And I can't blame them. If they feel like the only time you want to have sex with them is when the only time you touch them is when you want to have sex with them. I don't blame them if they don't feel like having it. It just doesn't. Why would they? So you need to learn to give affectionate touches without it leading to the bedroom. Number 4, you can show affection by your attention. This is kind of a big one to me. My wife, I think of all of the 4 that my wife would say that this was the one that I had to work the hardest on. When she's talking to me and I'm not paying attention. You know, something's on TV or something, or I'm reading a book and I don't stop what I'm doing. And I've had to work on this. I mean, this is one of those areas of my life where I worked on it. I'm much better at it now. I've had 51 years of practice. But you have to look her in the eyes, and by doing so, you're telling her that you value her opinion. You value what she is telling you, what she's talking about. It's a known fact that women have a much greater need to talk than men do. Now, my wife would say that's not true, that I talk more than she does. But there's a lot of studies that have been done that say women have 30,000 words in their tank for a day and men only have 20,000. And when they get home from work, they're tired of talking. And the wife she got 10,000 more to go. And she wants to talk a lot. And that's why women want to talk a lot more when they get in bed, because they still got 5,000 more words in their tank. And the husband just wants to go to sleep. So you got to tell her that you value what she's talking about. And let me say it this way. This is the right way to say it. In your wife's mind, conversation is affection. Conversation is affection. It's very deep affection for her. Go to Ephesians chapter 5, verse 28. Ephesians chapter 5, I do know where that is. I did know where that, I just couldn't find it. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 28 and 29. We'll deal a lot more with this section of scripture when we get out of this counseling part, but it says, so husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, and here's the word that you mentioned, Rachel, but nourishes and cherishes it just as the Lord does the church. So one of the deepest needs that a wife has is to feel cherished. Just feel cherished. She needs to know that she's so deeply loved. Sometimes my wife, I can be telling my wife how much I love her, and she just stops everything that she's doing. I mean, literally, she can just stop everything that she's doing. And if I look closely in her eyes, she's almost about to cry. Now, you would think after 51 years that wouldn't be necessary. But for her, it's still the most meaningful thing in our life that we are close and affectionate and intimate with one another. And she feels deeply loved and deeply cherished. So what does it mean to feel cherished? Well, the word cherished means the feeling that she's more important to you than anyone or anything else on the planet. Anyone or anything. My wife, I'm telling you, my wife, she has complete priority over everything in my life. She has a priority in my life over the ministry. I think she's my greatest ministry. To take care of her and to love her. And next to Jesus Christ, should not be anybody any more important in your life than your wife. Period. Not your children, not your friend, nobody. No one. It's your wife. And you have to love her like Christ loved the church.
And he died because he loved the church.
He did. He died for the church.
I think that feeling of I love you so much that, not that we would ever want that, but that all-encompassing,
Right.
that we mirror Jesus in the church.
I tell my wife,
Completely on board with that.
I tell my
It's
wife,
not that I want you to die, but it's
So
the
Alex
feeling
comes up
behind
missing this
it.
week.
Pray for me.
It's the feeling
Pray for Alex.
behind it, though.
Huh?
It's the feeling behind it.
Oh, I know. No, you're absolutely right, Rachel. There's,
I'm right.
I mean, if you look at the death, like taking that concept, it's not just the fact that he died for the church. It's he took the punishment that was due his bride. He
Yes.
stood in front of God's wrath and fully accepted everything that, using that symbolism, that the wife was due, he took it all.
Right.
And it's actually an exact representation of Adam and Eve in the garden. Now, I mean, our first Adam didn't quite handle it appropriately.
No,
He
he
said,
didn't.
God, look what you gave me, this is what happened. But I mean, that's how it was supposed to have been. And that's, so like I said, it's not just the fact that he died, it was what those actions actually did with the death, like what he did in our place for. Like that's where that love actually comes in. It's not just the death, it's what he helped us avoid.
it's hard to describe what he did.
Oh, it is.
It's hard to describe how much.
Words never will.
Right.
But once you feel that way about Jesus, that you know that he did that for you, and how horrible you are in your sins, it gives you a whole different relationship with him.
Sure.
You look at him, you cherish him that way.
Yeah.
Because he did all that. I mean, it changes, I think. He's not just somebody on a page in the Bible. He's somebody who died for you. It's amazing.
It is.
Let me add to that. I mean, the verses that we're going through too in Ephesians, it's really the word for love is agape love. And when I did a study on that, that was kind of life-changing for me as well. It's not love that's based on our feelings, and we often as husbands or wives, we base that love based on feelings. And God wants us to love them even when you know, our clothes aren't washed, or dinner isn't on time, or something
Sure.
like that. It's that love is wanting the highest good for them at all times. You know, and when I understood that agape love, it's a calculated choice. It's not based on feelings. It's the kind of love that Christ had for us. There was nothing in us that was appealing to him other than our sin, really. Well, maybe we were made in his image, but really there was nothing in us but he wanted our highest good, and he cherished us and did that for us. So it's, you know, it's not based on our feelings, and it's not based on a Hollywood love. This isn't a Hollywood love. It's,
Thank goodness.
yeah,
Thank goodness for that.
amen.
Hallelujah. Need number 2 is, need number 1 is your wife needs your affection. Need number 2 is that your wife needs your conversation. I want to read to you out of Philippians chapter 2. I want to read to you out of the Phillips translation. It says, live together in harmony and love, as though you had only one mind and one spirit between you. So the idea is that you need to have fellowship with your wife so that you can live in harmony and in love, as if you only had one mind and one spirit between you. I pretty much know exactly what my wife, how she's going to respond in almost any situation. I know almost anything. Today she got tested for COVID. She didn't have it. She'd been coughing and stuff, and she didn't want to take it. I knew she didn't want to take it because she believed it was allergies, which it was, and they gave her some steroids because of all the nasal drip she was having and all that kind of stuff. And we had been out in some smoke on Saturday at a birthday party for my grandson, and it just really stopped her up, and she just since that she just didn't feel good. But I wanted her to get the COVID test. I said, honey, it doesn't cost anything. The insurance pays for it. It'd take them about 10 seconds to do this, do the swab thing, and it'd be over, and it'd come back negative, and you'll know you can get around your grandkids. And she said, well, if it comes back negative, you won't be able to go to church. I said, to class tonight. I said, sweetheart, you're more important to me than anything on the planet. Would you please take this? And she said, yeah, I'll be glad to. She told the nurse right then she'd take it. You just have to talk through things sometimes. But there's only one way that you can live in harmony with your wife, and that's through communication. We were kind of talking about this on the way to class tonight, weren't we, Chris? About in another setting about how important communication is in a marriage. If you think of it this way, that if you don't communicate with one another, that you will never be able to have oneness. And oneness and intimacy are the goal. Oneness and intimacy are the goal. I would say ultimately that intimacy is the goal that leads to oneness, if I can say it that way. You have to communicate. If you do not communicate, there's just no way to have this oneness. It's a fact that women, I think, have a much greater need for conversation than men do. I hear this all the time. I hear this all the time when I'm doing marriage counseling, and the wife will say to me, she will literally say, my husband will not talk to me. He comes home, he's tired. He goes in there, he gets the paper, puts it up in front of his face, so nobody can see him, whatever. goes, he plops down in front of the, gets in front of the TV and becomes a couch potato until he goes to bed. The husband will not talk to me. The definition of conversation that you need to glean is verbal attention. Conversation is verbal attention. And when you do this, your wife is thinking to herself, he values what I have to say, so he's giving me his attention. There's sometimes when my wife wants to talk about things that I don't want to listen to. She's more interested in the details of the day, all the details, you know, all the little things that happen. And so called, and this happened, and that happened, and I it's like, am I really interested in this? And a lot of times the answer is no. But it doesn't matter. I'm going to give her my attention. It just doesn't matter. I'm going to give her my attention when she's talking to me. I may not hear her. I have trouble hearing. And James and I both wear hearing aids. And I call them earplugs. I don't know why. But I'm not wearing them tonight. But and my wife talks so softly, we can be riding in the car and the hearing aid magnifies everything. So you're riding down the road and the road doesn't sound like it's, you know, it's like a plane taking off. And my wife's sitting over there saying, where do you want to go to for lunch? You know, and I can't hear a word she says. And James, you ever had that problem?
Mm-hmm.
And
I've had it in your truck before.
Yeah, I have you. Mm-hmm. It just works all that
I've been
way.
in the back and here in your, I've been in the back of your truck with my wife, and the tires are so loud on the road with my hearing aids that I'm having a hard time hearing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm trying to help my wife understand that I just didn't hear her.
Mhm.
So I'm not upset with her, but when you sit and talk and listen and interact and look at your wife in the eye, regardless of whether or not you want to talk about the things that she wants to talk about, it means to her that you're interested in her, you're interested in her day, you're interested in the grandchildren, you're interested in what's important to her, what meant something to her, in the issues that maybe she has, maybe there's some financial issues, whatever it was that stressed her out during the day. You're interested in that, and she knows that she has your attention and that you're going to listen to her. So if you want to make some significant progress in your marriage, you've got to learn how to communicate. It's not a man's nature to sit around and just talk. Men just not going to sit around and just talk, you know.
I've noticed that.
That neck
The
snapped, by the way.
Huh?
I was letting Alex know that when he said I've noticed, I said that neck snapped, by the way.
I do enjoy people's company more sometimes when I don't have to talk. Just to be
There.
with somebody and not necessarily feel like I have to force a conversation. Just live my life in the presence of somebody else without having to. Is that a guy thing?
Well, guys just don't have the same need for conversation that women do. But I think all of this, what I'm talking about, is related more to the home than it is to just out in public somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I like living with my family, my wife and my kids,
Yeah.
but I don't always want to talk.
But what?
I don't always want to talk.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, just being with her, sometimes to me is better than.
But that's the problem. Okay, I'm just going to tell you you have identified the problem as a man. You're thinking like a man. That's what I said to begin with. Men and women are different.
I can see that smirk from back here.
Men and women are different. You don't shake your head because we're all just like you. you know, every one of, all of us men are just like that.
It's like sitting in the sun outside
Yeah,
in a chair. I could sit out and watch my kids go do their thing and sit there with my wife in the warmth of the sun and enjoy the moment a lot more.
she's not demanding that you talk with her in every second that you're with her.
No, I don't necessarily
But
think that it's
she
a bad
wants
thing
you
do that
to
all the time.
communicate with her, and she wants to be able to communicate with you.
I do want him to listen though when I am.
Okay, there we
I want him
go.
to look at me and not his phone.
That's right.
Give me a break.
Hey. No, that's right. That's right. It's right.
You're not the only one who hears it. Everybody,
Yeah.
every one of us do.
My wife has said that same thing to me.
We're all at fault in that.
Would you please put your
To
phone
some
down?
degree.
Yeah, Cindy will say to me,
Yeah.
you need to look at me.
That's right.
I need you to look at me. I'll be like,
Because
I
you're
was-
not listening. She
I
knows
was,
you're
I
not
was
listening.
listening, honey. I was listening.
But
She's
you-
like,
but
I
you
just need
weren't,
you to look at
probably.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I made that. I mean, that's what I'm saying here.
It doesn't matter how good of a multitasker you
I've
are.
had to make an effort to put a phone down
Mhm.
and just put it away.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And just make a point to do that. And it can be a challenge because they can draw us so much. And something that with social media especially, we're more connected, but we're more alone than we ever were.
Yep. That's what the research says.
We're more connected to everything going on out there, but we're more really alone. And so it's been it's a hard lesson, even for myself to learn.
Yeah.
Just put I have to put the thing away and not mess with it, and pay attention to her and talk to her, and there's effort has to go into that
Right.
effort, and I've seen women do the same thing. They're locked in on what all the drama or whatever that is out there. That they can see, oh, so-and-so's got this drama, or there's so-and-so's arguing about this, that, or the other, let me see what else who commented what, or whatever. And, but we can easily get sucked into its own stuff.
Yeah.
It's just, they're designed that way.
Well, even if you don't answer the phone, just doing this little ding thing where it dings, and you got a message, you got a text, somebody's calling you, you're sitting up, she's talking to you, and you're sitting over there looking at it, Alex, there's nothing that you said there that we men don't understand, okay? There's nothing about that. But the point is that my wife really wants me to communicate with her and to listen to her. Sometimes I'll be studying, I'll be studying in my study. It's like a man cave for me, and I'm surrounded by books, and I've got all kinds of papers out, and I'm doing everything that I can possibly do to get through with something. And my wife will walk in and plop the mail down in front of me and say, we need to take care of this or something, or you need to sign this, or you need to look at this. And I'm just thinking, okay, that's kind of the way I feel. But I have to stop. How I feel and what I need to do are completely two different things. I'm not going to say, just put them over there, I'll look at them later. She brought them in there and interrupted me while I was studying, because she thought it was that important. And she wants me to give her attention. And I've learned the best I know how, I've learned how to do that. Am I successful at it every day? Probably not. But have I learned to do it? I have. And I'm a lot more at peace about it. That I can do that without it just destroying my concentration,
But that's nice that you recognize. She knew you were in there studying. She
Oh, yeah.
knows you don't really want to be interrupted, but so she considered all that. And then she put it in front of you because she did think it was important. She didn't just
She wasn't
haphazardly
she
do
wasn't
it
taking
to
advantage
aggravate
of me at all.
She wasn't trying to aggravate you.
No,
She was just
she wasn't
trying
being
to
rude.
No.
get the task done.
Right,
So that's nice of you.
right,
Acknowledge that.
right.
Well, Gary, you kind of alluded to this last week, the key for the secret behind being able to do all this stuff as a husband for me is the closer I get to the Lord, the more I love my wife. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Well, the closer you get to the Lord, the closer you get to her.
Yes, I mean, there's been times when I'm in prayer, and I've been in the men's prayer meeting, knowing my wife's in the house, thinking, I'm there and I'm getting close to the Lord, and I'm thinking, I can't wait to just get in there and spend time with her. The more time I spend with the Lord, the more I put Him first, the more affection and the closer I am to my wife.
Yeah.
And you alluded to that, and you said if you're not spending a lot of time with the Lord, you're going to be cranky with your wife. That's so true. I mean, it's not that I love my wife, I miss her. Just leaving tonight, I kissed her on the way out the door, and I missed her by the time I was to the car. But that's because I know it's the Lord in me that gives me that deep affection.
Well, that's the way that it should be.
Yeah.
But a lot of guys, they can't hardly wait to get out of the house.
Yeah.
Go somewhere, run down to the gym, work out, whatever it may be.
Right.
They don't want to hear about all the kids and everything that went on. So I think that just as a sort of I think for me the key is that if I'm going to really do what we're talking about here, I'm going to recognize the need for conversation. It means that I'm going to look my wife in the eyes when I'm talking to her or when she's talking to me. I'm going to look her in the eyes. I'm going to look straight at her. I'm going to look her in the eyes when I'm talking. And let her know that I'm interested in what she's saying. So, I think one of the best times that my wife and I have with just the two of us, we have a certain restaurant that we like to go to. It's about 40 miles away. And one of the reasons that we don't mind going 40 or maybe even 50 miles at sometimes, there's a place in Columbia and there's another place near Augusta that we like to go to. And either way it's going to be 40, 50 miles either way. And I'll say, let's go to such and such a place. And she says, yep, that'd be great. And the reason that we enjoy that trip so much is because we know that we're going to get to spend an hour, almost an hour going and an hour coming back, and probably an hour eating, and we talk the whole time. We could just talk the whole time. We just talk the whole time. We have conversation. It's like for us, it's just a great time for us. And so if the goal is to become best friends with your wife, and it should be, then you've got to develop some shared interests so you can have some things to talk about, right? My wife and I both go to therapy. The therapy place that we go to, the physical therapy place we go to, has a chiropractor. And so if we make them schedule our appointments together so that we're in the room, I'm in the room with her when she's seeing the chiropractor, and she's in there with me when I'm seeing the chiropractor, and we're talking. We get in the car and we do the physical therapy at the same time. So we do everything kind of at the same time. It takes about an hour and a half, about 30 minutes with the chiropractor for both of us, and an hour in the therapy. And we have all kinds of things to talk about when we leave. When we leave there. So I want my wife to feel better. I want to know where she's hurting. if your interests never meet, then you'll never be best friends. If you don't have any shared interest, you'll never be best friends. It's like the guys that are always playing golf or got some hobby that they're always, they're into this or they're into that, and they just don't have time for their wife. There are just some things that you are never going to like to do that maybe she wants to do, and vice versa. There are things that she doesn't want to do that maybe you want to do, and you got to find something in between that both of you can do together. I think it's okay for you to do some things individually, but if you don't have anything you can do together, I want you to think of it as the fact that you are headed in the wrong direction. You have to find things that just the two of you want to do together so that you can be together, share that interest, so that you can talk and so that you can communicate. And when you spend time together, you talk. I did some research over the years. I've done some research. This is really kind of interesting. I'm going to generalize it so it just seemed a little bit easier to understand. But in a lot of marriages, the husband may literally not see his wife for anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes a day. He gets home, he gets up, he goes to work, maybe the wife's at home, or she goes to work, whatever it may be. They come home, they're kind of in the kitchen, maybe he's kind of helping with the kids or doing something, and then she's putting clothes in the laundry, and he's getting the kids a bath, and however all that works, in a family. And then they just kind of plop down, and they're tired, and they don't really want to talk. And so they don't. They'd rather just kind of dull out and watch the TV for a little bit. I'm not against that. I'm not against a couple sitting down and watching something together if they want to. But, you get up in the morning, you rush off to work. My wife and I are on completely opposite schedules because I go to bed earlier than she does, and I get up earlier than she does. So she always gets into bed later than I do, but she sleeps later than I do. She has trouble going to sleep, and so she just reaches that place where she just can't, stay up. It helps her to go to sleep, and so you can spend some time together, but you don't have meaningful conversation. You just don't have meaningful conversation. It's not in-depth conversation. You come home at night, you're tired, you sit down, you eat dinner, you do some chores, you go to bed. And day after 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 day goes by, and you don't have any meaningful conversation. Happens all the time. Happens in marriages every day. I've done so much marriage counseling. I get tired of hearing this story over and over and over again. I just get weary of hearing the story. It's like sometimes a couple comes in, I kind of know what's going on. I say, why don't you let me tell you what I think is going on in your marriage? Why don't you let me tell you what's happening? If I did that, I'd bet 90% of the time I'd be exactly right. I'd be exactly right as to what they're doing, what they're not doing. You got to develop some common interests where you're doing meaningful things together. Go to Philippians chapter 2 and verse 4. Philippians 2 verse 4 says, let each of you look out not only for his own interest, but also for the interest of others. Well, let's just change that around a little bit, okay? Let's just kind of make it meaning for us. Let each of you look not out for your own interest, but also for the interest of your wife. or your husband, whichever word you want to put there. Others is kind of a broad word. It's a broad spectrum of Christianity. But let's narrow it down to the home. Let's narrow it down to our life. Let's narrow it down to where we live and say, look, I have to develop some interest with my wife. I have to have some common interest. Sometimes you may just have to set aside your plans to be able to do what she wants to do. It's just that simple. You just set them aside and say, okay, no problem. That's exactly what we'll do. Men are kind of achievement oriented. That's why I never want to stop when we're traveling on a trip, right? I want to get there. I guess every man in this room is that way. Put me in the car.
Long rides.
Put me in the car, off we go.
Yep.
Right? I don't want to stop for anything, you know. Kids in the back screaming, I gotta go to the bathroom, I gotta go to the bathroom. We'll be there in a little bit. Hold it.
Here's a Gatorade bottle.
Huh?
Here's a Gatorade bottle.
That's right. That's right.
Ride out.
But it's more fun to stop for photos and stop.
Well, that's
Not if you're the one
because,
driving.
let me say this. Let me say this for the benefit of those men that are in this room. That's why it's more fun for women. The man has a target.
Well, I mean, I will say
We
this
want to
too.
get there.
It depends if you're driving or not. So if you're in the passenger seat, whether man or woman, it's a whole lot easier to take joy in those stops and the sightseeing.
Go to the bathroom.
You the one driving. You just trying to get there.
Right.
And that's when your relief hits, is when you get there, not at each stop.
You know, things happen
Huh?
when you stop too. Something's more likely to happen if you just keep
I'm
going until you get there.
I'm being a little facetious to make the point, but I think it's true. You know, that's why men don't like to do much shopping, right? How many of you men just love to go shopping?
Well, what are you shopping for? Now, if you tell me guns, I'm with you.
Oh, okay.
Electronics, I'm with you.
Okay, but my wife's not shopping for guns.
No.
She's not shopping for guns, and she doesn't really care too much about shopping for electronics either.
Probably treasures.
Huh?
She's looking for treasures.
She doesn't, my wife doesn't know what she's looking for sometimes. She's just looking.
I'll know it when I see it.
That's right, she's just looking.
I've witnessed that with your wife.
Yeah.
Me and Cindy went to a
Di-
store
Dil-
in
Dillard.
Aiken. No, we went with you guys at one time, but one time we went to a store in Aiken. We were looking for some carpet. We saw Brenda in there. We did not expect to see her. And she was just looking around. That's all she was doing, just going down each aisle, just looking around. You know, I thought it was great.
One of the most fun trips Tracy and I had, we went to Gatlinburg for the weekend, and on the way back, we went through the mountains, and we just stopped wherever we felt like stopping.
Mhm.
Stopped at different overlooks. There was a historic farm. There was a whatever. Just we had no schedule. Was the key to that.
Right.
We didn't have to be home by a certain time. Let's just stop. Okay, I want to stop here. Okay, fine. Well, I want to stop here. Okay, fine. We're gonna stop. You know, and we just had a blast doing that.
Yep.
And, you know, but again, we weren't on a schedule that, you know, so it allowed for that.
Right.
So that was one of the most fun times.
How many kids did you have with you?
None.
See, that's the
But,
component
but you
too.
know what? Even if we had the kids, then it'd have been fun showing them, like, take a look at this. Look at how beautiful this is.
Sure, I think you're little memories, and I can appreciate that.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff. You know, so
See,
Yeah.
life is a journey. You're doing the journey with her.
mhm.
Why do you need to rush home?
Yeah.
It's you're on an adventure. So
Sure.
why not take in?
Because the path to heaven is narrow.
But that, you know,
And that'd be
and
why.
again, that trip allowed for it though.
Yeah.
Was a fortunate thing. For others don't necessarily.
Well, I've heard it said that men don't shop, they're like hunters, you know. I normally know what I want, I know what row it's on, I know where to go get it, I wanna go in there and get it and stuff. But I have to say to you, that this is important for me to say. You know, if I want something, if I want a shirt, I just go get the shirt. You know, if I want a pair of shoes, I go get the shoes. I kind of know, I know what I want to do. Women shop. They just kind of hate buying. They want to shop. And so it doesn't matter to them, they could spend all day looking for something that they never intend to buy anyway. Now, I'll make a statement here. I have grown, everybody, all you men listen to me, I have grown to love going shopping with my wife. She can't shop long now because of her knee, because she just can't walk.
That's not it's not in here, Alex.
Huh?
Alex is looking at Rachel, he's about to take out her knee.
But
Tanya Harding.
but I love going shopping with my wife. She loves to go to Hamrick's in Augusta, right in North Augusta, right know where that is, Hamrick's. It's a big store, basically for women. It has stuff for men there too, you know, but it's got more clothes there for women you can shake a stick at. And she Hamrick's, and she just walk around and just go and look and go try something on, and it doesn't fit, and she'll come out and, you know, she won't know how I like it, and I might not like the way it looks on her, and it's not because I like shopping, not at all. It's because I'm doing something with my wife that she really enjoys. And there's no time restraint here. So I've grown, I've learned how to enjoy shopping with my wife. I don't rush her. You're never going to find me rushing her. I'm not going to be pushing her to get out of the store. We got to be somewhere else. I'm not nagging her about getting home. And it's something that means the world to her, that I feel that way. She knows that I feel that way. She says, do you mind if we stop on the way home? And the only place I really don't like to go is Walmart. I mean,
The Walmart adventure.
I just don't like to go to Walmart. She knows that, but I go with her anyway. I don't want her to ever go to Walmart without me. I don't want her to get out of the car anywhere that's close to Walmart without her husband. She's got a knife in one pocket, she's got this pepper spray in the other hand, and she's walking down, you know. We watch too many films of the guys walking on each side, you know, and pushing the woman in the car and all that kind of stuff. I don't want her to go by herself. I said, no, I'll go. I said, where are you going? She goes, I'm thinking about going to Walmart. I said, I'm going with you.
Have you ever gone somewhere while she was still shopping and you went out to the car and started blowing the horn?
And it was?
You went got in the car and started blowing the horn
One
from
time.
the store. There were all the ladies in the store like, you better look a little longer. See who's blowing the
I don't
horn.
remember that.
I do not church remember.
I don't not believe her, but I don't remember that event. I just know it's just, I like to do things with her like that, not blow the horn. Go look at stuff, but it's a compounded problem when you have 4 kids. You know, when you go looking at stuff and you have to buy something that you don't want because they turned around with their elbows out and knocked something off the shelf and broke it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that kind of shopping I do not like. But I do like to spend random time, you know, with like the kids. I just kind of,
Good.
you know, it stresses me out more to have children. I don't feel like I can enjoy my wife as much as I can. Like when we were working there at school, like let's go get something to eat. You know, I enjoy that time much more than. I feel like when I have kids, I have to be on the guard all the time. You know.
Probably do.
Yeah.
Probably do.
But I do not remember blowing the horn to hurry her. This might have been when I had stomach problems, you know, and then that's a whole nother situation, so.
Hey, we believe your wife. And she said you were blowing the horn. We believe your wife.
I probably was, I just.
That you've been encouraging the ladies in the store.
Yes.
Oh, when you got kids, I can understand maybe wanting to blow the horn sometimes.
Yeah.
I had 5 boys, and sometimes you'd be in the store and there's a fist fight going on in the back.
I want to give you need number 3, and then we'll close for tonight. This is not long. And then next week, if you want to get here early, we're going to talk about sex the whole time. So
I better bring my wife.
Need number 3. Your wife needs your openness and honesty. When I say openness, I mean that your wife has a deep craving to know the details of your life. Some men just do not talk. They don't talk enough. They do not talk enough to their wife. She wants to know what you're thinking. She wants to know how you feel about things. She wants to know the details. It means a lot to her. To us, it doesn't mean that much. You know, it's not important, you know, but she still wants to know. In fact, the worst thing that can happen for me sometimes is that when I forget to tell my wife something that everybody else knows about, and I just forgot to tell her. We had a lady the other day that announced somehow on Facebook, I don't know what it was in our church, that she was pregnant. And somehow I saw it and I forgot to tell my wife about it. And so, you know, she wants to know. She wants to know those things. You know, that's important to her. Is it a boy or a girl? How, you know, far along is she? And blah, 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 blah. For me, it's that so-and-so's pregnant.
Done.
Done. You know, when the baby's born, how much did he weigh? How long was it, baby? For me, is it a boy or girl? You know, it's that simple. But I'm past all that. Now I know what she needs, and it's I'm okay to. I'll ask sometimes, well, how much did the baby weigh? I feel kind of awkward doing that because I don't know what it means. You know, 8 pounds, 6 ounces. But well, I guess that's a big baby. My wife has a right to know those things because I'm married to her. And your wife ought to know you better than anybody else in the world, but that cannot happen if you don't talk to her, if you don't communicate with her. If you're not open with her and give her accurate information, she will never trust you. Did you hear what I just said? If you're not open with your wife, if you don't talk with her, if you don't just open up and give her accurate information, she will not trust you. And you can be assured that a woman that does not trust you is going to be difficult to satisfy. You must build openness in your relationship. I think there are a lot of men that are very afraid to be open with their wives. We're afraid of our feelings. I'm not. I'm going to say that I'm not. There are days with some of the cancer treatments that I take, they mess with my emotions. They mess with my hormones. So they just mess with me. And there's some days I don't feel sorry for myself. I don't sit around and just, oh no, woe is me. But they just do something to my hormones like they do to a woman. I've learned a lot about hormones that I almost wish I had never learned, but I appreciate women now while they do all this in church. You know, one's freezing and the other's having a hot flash, because I have hot flashes all the time. And but men are afraid of their feelings. They are especially afraid to share their fears. That's not the manly thing to do. Well, when my hormones just sort of get a little bit out of whack, there are times I just sit down and I just say, sweetheart, I just feel like crying. I just want to sit here and cry today. And she said, that's okay. She said, that's okay. And I've done that. You know, I don't do it every day. I don't feel that way quite as much anymore as I had earlier. And I take both of my shots together in the same month, on the same day, at the same time. It affects me that way. You know, it just happens. men don't want to, there's a fear of failing and a fear that you'll not be a provider and that you'll not be a spiritual leader. It's not that way for every man. Some men just don't care, but they're probably because they're not saved, but I'm not talking to unsaved people here. But here's what I want you to know, men, so just listen very carefully what I'm going to say to you next. When you begin sharing with your wife the things that you fear the most, that's what's going to create the deepest levels of intimacy in your marriage. It will. Just trust me. When you're afraid of certain things, like I'm going to fail, and you begin to share that with your wife, she knows that she's getting to hear the deepest part of your life, the things that you are afraid of. And she already knows what you're afraid of. She's smarter than you are. She already knows what you're afraid of, but rather than having her think less of you, you'll find that when you share those things with your wife, they'll not scare you anymore. The things you fear the most in your life will not make her think less of you. She'll become your biggest supporter. I have to face talking about death all the time. I mean, I do. I have to. I go to doctors and, they're talking about this and that, and sometimes it's not fun. And my wife is always there with me. And I try to do everything I can not to say anything or talk in any way that makes her feel afraid. I don't want to be afraid, And but she knows what I'm thinking. She just knows me that well. And when we just get intimate and I'm able to share with her my deepest feelings about what's going on in my life, it just draws us closer together. It gives me strength. It gives her strength. And so you want to be able to share with your wife as much as you possibly can. All right, I'm going to stop there. Any questions? Any comments? No snide remarks allowed, right?
I'm just gonna say it's fun sitting back in the third row and watching looks get exchanged back and forth. I'm just going down here.
It wouldn't matter if we had 20 couples in here tonight, they would all do the same thing.
Yeah,
They'd all do the same
This is
thing.
the time it's fun to be the single guy sitting in the back of the class just watching.
It's a good learning experience.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's have a word of prayer and we'll be dismissed.